Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Leslie presents. And now your host, Paul Leslie.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome the talented and lovely Leslie Uggams. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
At heart, who is Leslie Uggams?
Just a Washington Heights girl. New York, bred and born.
What was life like growing up?
Oh, I had a great life growing up. I had a lot of fun in my neighborhood. I loved going to school. I loved being the little ham that I was as a young kid, being in show business. I did pretty well.
What was your favorite music growing up?
I liked everything because I had an aunt that introduced me to opera. She was also in Porgy and Bess, so I was exposed to that music. My mother always had records of great singers like Ella and Billie Holiday and Nat King Cole and Sinatra. And then I also grew up in the church, so, I had that kind of music. So I liked everything.
Can you recall the very first gig at the Apollo?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I worked with Louis Armstrong at the Apollo. That was my first gig when I was 9 years old.
What was the most important thing you learned as a result of your performances at the Apollo?
I got to watch how they interacted with an audience and how they could hold the audience in the palm of their hand by doing great shows, being personable, and being extremely talented, naturally.
You just mentioned Louis Armstrong a moment ago. Who have you shared a stage with that has been the greatest pleasure, if you could name just one?
All of them. I can't name just one because I was too blessed to name just one. I worked with Ella, I worked with Dinah, I worked with Louis, I worked with Sinatra, I worked with Sammy Davis, Bob Hope. I worked with all people who are legends in the business, and they were legends for a reason, and just to be asked to be on a show with them meant that you had something going.
Definitely. The new album is called Uptown Downtown.
Yes.
What was your inspiration behind the idea to do an autobiographical album?
Well, the interesting thing about it, it was one of those things, I call it my, tumbleweed kind of situation, because I was asked to do 2 nights at Jazz at Lincoln Center for the American Songbook. And so I decided that I wanted to do a terrific show because I was doing it in my hometown, so I better be good. And I asked a director that I have worked with who we did a musical based on Lena Horne. I asked him, I said, listen, I'm going to do the show, and I have some ideas and stuff and everything. And he said, well, I got to come up with a title. And he came up with the title, Uptown Downtown. And immediately when he came up with that, the music started flowing because I am an uptown girl in New York City, born and raised in Washington Heights, who became very successful, not only uptown, but I became successful downtown, which meant television and theater, and then the songs just came rolling out of our brains. And that's how that all came about.
The album opens with Rhapsody Blue, and there's a boat that's leaving for New York. What gave you the idea to open with those songs?
Well, my aunt was in Porgy and Bess, and that was the first Broadway show that I ever saw that was the musical, was Porgy and Bess. And I saw, my aunt did all the Porgy and Bess except the original one. And so therefore, that was my introduction to Gershwin and to great, great music. And so we thought, how could we not go wrong by doing Rhapsody in Blue, because it's Little Leslie.
The album also includes the very beautiful song, My Own Morning. Can you remember the first time you heard that song?
Well, I was the one that created the song because I was on Broadway doing my first Broadway show, Hallelujah Baby, and I starred in it. So naturally I would have to do that. I won a Tony Award for that show.
What are your recollections of that Broadway debut of Hallelujah Baby?
Oh, it was a fabulous experience. I was working with Comden and Green and Julie Stein and Arthur Lawrence and Bert Shevelov, all fabulous in their own right, legends in their own right, and I got to be in their presence every day while we rehearsed, and I learned a lot from that experience.
Another really great song on this album is Sunny Side of the Street.
Yes. That's a great song. That was in my act when I played the Apollo for the first time. The Schiffmans, who owned the Apollo at that particular time, put this act together, and they had a famous band leader in my father's day who came up with the arrangements for all the songs that I did in the show, and that was one of the songs, Sunny Side of the Street.
When you look back at when you were performing as a very, very young girl, and when you were on television, were you scared ever? I mean, or have you always just been a natural in that kind of environment?
Well, television was very young, and it's not like it is now. Kids could make mistakes, and everything was live, and that's how it was. There was no editing and stuff like that. What you saw was what you got. So I wasn't really scared because for me, there was no big consequences. I was doing either little guest appearances on children's shows or, little contests and things like that. So it was nothing to really fear,
There's a really cool version on this album of Up on the Roof.
Yes.
That Carole King song. So how did the idea come about to do it just as a guitar and vocal song?
That was my idea. First of all, I worked with the Drifters at the Apollo several times, and I was a big Drifters fan, and that particular song happened to be one of my favorites. And because we were talking about being uptown, that song always reminded me of when we were in the summertime. A lot of times kids would hang up on the roof and just kind of chill in my neighborhood, and that song always spoke to me in a certain kind of way. And I have a fabulous guitar player by the name of Steve Baganetti, who's very well known here in the city, and I thought, I want to do a song with just guitar. And one day I said to him, Steve, I love this song, and we just kind of started doing it, and we went, oh, we like this. And then I put it in the show, and the people go crazy over this song. I hadn't realized how it touches people.
Did you have the idea to do Yesterday by Paul McCartney and then follow that with Yesterday's, the Jerome Kern song?
Yes, I did. We happened to be rehearsing one day, and I knew the Beatles, and a true story is that Mitch, when the Beatles became popular while we were doing Sing-Along with Mitch, he didn't like rock and roll. He thought that the Beatles were just going to be a fad, and I was a big Beatles fan. And I loved a lot of the Beatles songs, but one of my favorites happened to be Yesterday's. And I said, I want to put this in the show because we talk about Mitch and rock and roll and stuff like that. And so I was sitting, we were rehearsing, and I was sitting there going through music, going over the lyrics, and through a big book that has all kinds of songs. And then I turned the page, and next to it was Yesterday's, the Noah Coward song, and I just automatically went into that from the Beatles song, and I went, oh my God, somebody is trying to tell me something, and that's how that came about.
Another great track from the album is Stormy Weather.
Yeah, Lena.
Yeah, what does Lena Horne mean to you?
Well, everything. She was like the goddess in my household. I mean, for African American people of a certain generation like my parents, she was just it. And when I was a kid, I would go to the movies whenever she was doing a number in a movie and stuff like that. And my father, who was not that jumping up and down about me being in show business, he wanted me to get an education, go to college. And as I got more popular as a kid and started doing it, he finally said to me, okay, if you're going to do this, I want you to be like Lena, because Lena Horne is a lady. And so she's always been a part of my life. She pinned me as a Delta, a sorority member. And so when I went to a one-woman show, naturally she did Stormy Weather, and she did two versions of Stormy Weather. And then I did a musical that is based on her life that we're trying to bring to Broadway right now. And that is the closing number. And the people just went crazy. And so everybody said, you got to put this in your show. And so that's how that came about.
The name of the album is Uptown Downtown. There is the work of so many great songwriters on this album. Is it possible for you to pick your favorite songwriter?
Let me put it this way. Whenever I do music, I have to love it, and I have to love the songwriter. There's nothing in my shows that I ever do that somebody says, well, do this song, and I go, oh, okay. I mean, it really has to speak to me. And I'm a big, I love the melodies, but I'm a big lyric person that really has to say something and tell a story, because I'm all about trying to tell the story as well as singing it. All my choices, no matter what kind of show I'm doing, are choices of people that have something to say that I can tell the story about.
What is the best thing about being Leslie?
Well, I've had a wonderful career, and I'm still doing it. I'm constantly meeting people. It gives me an opportunity to travel all over the world, to speak to them through my music, and I couldn't ask for anything more. I mean, I've got a fabulous family that has always been very supportive, my children, my husband. Life is good.
Would you say that all your dreams have come true, or are there any that you're working on?
I'm always working on something else. I like to work. I'm always looking for new challenges. I like to be in the now, and I like to be in the future. And so I'm always fascinated by what's happening in the business that I'm in, this whole digital world and YouTube and all that stuff, and how you can reach a bigger audience. I'm always searching.
For my last question, this broadcast is going to be heard by people in a lot of different places. What would you like to say to them wherever they are?
Come and see me. I mean, we have a good time when I do my show live. I like people to come. They'll have a good time. They'll hear a lot of stories. That with everything that's on that CD, there's a story of how that song came about, how things happen in my career, and people are always just amazed and fascinated by the stories, because I've been doing this. I've worked with so many people, and there's always a lot of funny stories, a lot of touching stories, a lot of composers that I work with that were live, that I question and ask them why did they write the song. So if I'm appearing someplace, you find out a lot of things about the music.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to have this interview with you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
All right. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.